Valorant players are obsessed with crosshairs. So in this video, we'll try to answer the question why and whether they actually make you play better. Do the pros really hold the secret sauce to snappy aim in their settings? Luckily for us, Riot revealed all sorts of crosshairs during their Masters Reykjavik social media promotion, so I copied the crosshairs from the entire championship team, OpTic, to do a little bit of testing myself. Also, check the description below for the import codes for these crosshairs. Let's start with Crashies, a clutch initiator player with duelist fragging potential. He rocks a bright green plus of medium size with no outlines. It's a pretty standard looking one that should be functional at a variety of distances with the Vandal, which is by far his most played weapon of choice. Crashies tends to take a lot of medium range fights while fighting for early map control or anchoring the entrance to sites. You can see how clustered his kills are on a map like Ascent. I tested the crosshair for a week across a variety of death matches and range routines with pretty average results. Of all the OpTic crosshairs, this was my worst performer in deathmatch and near the bottom for hard boss in Eliminate 50. That being said, I felt pretty comfortable with it, and though I personally use a white crosshair normally, I also thought the green was pretty easy to see and very viable. It's also worth mentioning that I'm not sure which pros play on stretch resolution in their actual games, but I personally use native, so some of the crosshair experiences might be a little bit different. And before we get on to the next crosshair, I just want to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of this video, which is Valorant Tracker. Now, I've been working with Valorant Tracker for a while, and it's just a great tool to use when you're trying to keep track of your own performance and your own improvement in the game of Valorant. And it can be really useful if you are experimenting with new settings or a new crosshair to be able to actually get real-time feedback and statistics of how that is affecting your gameplay using Valorant Tracker's ability to track things like headshots or your individual performance on weapon. Go grab Valorant Tracker from the link in the description below, and you can have some real-time feedback about whether that new crosshair is actually making you better or not. So let's get back to the rest of the video. Moving on to Finesse was an interesting change for me. He uses a much larger crosshair than most pros with a pretty large gap. He also used the bright green, but has outlines for even more clarity and distinction from the background. My first thought was that the larger crosshair would be slightly less precise, but perhaps a bit more useful when spraying. And if we look at FNS's weapon choices, we can see that he has a pretty equal usage between Vandal and Phantom, and he also tends to favor weapons like the Spectre or Frenzy in Classic on heavily economy rounds. A lot of this makes sense when considering that FNS is not really known to be a heavy fragger and does a lot more of his work on lurks, as well as IGLing and supportive utility usage. When I tested out the crosshair, I had some interesting results. This was my second best one in deathmatch and about middle of the pack for the range tests. I found it to be very streaky in death matches with plenty of kill streaks, but also a lot of whiffing at longer ranges. Looking at his kill locations in pro matches, FNS likes to take closer range fights a lot of the time, with plenty of ratty angles and sight anchoring mixed in there as well. Marved has been putting up some insane numbers in the smokes roll lately, and his crosshair is as snappy as his aim has been. This tiny green plus demands precision and fits right in with his heavy Vandal usage along with other precision weapons. Marved is a hyper-aggressive lurker who finds kills all over the map and seems to function with a lot of freedom to make individual plays in the OpTic system. When testing out this crosshair, I found it a bit harder to use than some of the other ones due to how small it was and the fact that the green sometimes got lost on the screen for me. That being said, I did feel some super crisp shots at longer ranges, and it performed in the middle of the pack for deathmatch tests. It's also worth noting that as of the most recent OpTic matches, Marv was using the same crosshair as Ye, and he appears to change his crosshair almost every game, but I figured it was worth including regardless. It's duelist time now as we look at Victor's crosshair. The medium to large size white settings are bold and easy to see. At first, I felt like the crosshair gap was a little bit big for precision, but after testing, it felt relatively easy to shoot, even if it was a little bit inconsistent. Victor's crosshair performed the best of all of them in the range tests, and about middle of the pack for deathmatch ones. Looking at his weapon choice, we can see a pretty wide spread and plenty of run and gun potential, which makes a lot of sense considering Victor's role in the team on agents like Neon and Raze. Taking a quick look at where most of his gunfights occur, there are plenty of early map control skirmishes at close range and some very heavy entry work done on retake scenarios. So it does make sense that he might have a little bit larger crosshair to fight at this medium range. Overall, this was probably my least favorite one to use personally, but it still had some pretty decent results. Time to look at the Lord of Destruction himself. El Diablo's tiny white cross is exactly what you might expect from a player known for ridiculously precise aim. Ye is known for his demonic chamber performances, which reward crisp one-taps and long-range fights. This is clearly reflected in his engagement charts, where we can see clusters of kills in spots that favor longer distance and more passive angle holds on both defense and offense. Now, obviously Ye is also known for his heavy use of the operator, which has a different crosshair entirely, and I believe that his is basically just the default one. We can see that his weapon usage is pretty much all precision weapons between the Op and the Vandal and the Classic. Just kidding, this classic percentage is basically all going to be Headhunter or Bladestorm rounds, so pretty much the same type of one-tap scenario. In my tests, Ye's crosshair had the best stats in deathmatch and came in second in both of the range tasks that I tested. I should also mention that my own crosshair is very similar to Ye's in both color and shape, which probably did bias the results quite a bit. A crosshair in an FPS is kind of like a pair of shoes. We all have slightly different needs and sizes, which makes finding the perfect fit a little difficult. Your occupation in life tends to determine what kind and shape your shoes are. For example, Lionel Messi wears one style, while Kanye West sports a different one. Likewise, different crosshairs can definitely fit into certain roles or playstyles, so it's worth considering this when you're setting up your own. If you enjoyed this video, let me know, and I might do some more crosshair reviews in the future. Peace.